Dr. William Parker, CEO of Parker Maritime Technologies, author of Guaranteeing America's Security in the 21st Century, former naval commander as well, who has commanded in the Mediterranean squadrons and more. Bill, we've got a lot to unpack, my friend. And if you heard the caller there, and it is a question that is worth exploring. How do we, after the successful mission completion, part one, how do we then, and by what methods can we assess what happened in those three sites?
No, it's a great question by somebody in your audience there, and I'll tell you that battle damage assessment is something that has been used for quite a while, and it becomes more and more sophisticated. Certainly, nobody has more access to the BDA, the battle damage assessment, than the president. So he probably has a very good feel of what happened or what didn't happen in that particular case, and it includes not only camera footage and satellites and many other things that are used to include human, but also assessment from the intelligence world on whether or not the mission was a success. So when a head of state, whether it's President Trump or President Obama or whichever president is, when they say that the battle damage assessment is such that it was successful, normally that's the case. You do have to have some caution, though, in making those statements, and we can remember back to the mission complete statement, which is a much bigger issue of not just one specific tactical assessment, but when you're talking about a strategic assessment, that gets much more complicated. So to answer your audience's question, the BDA will take a while to get all of the details, especially when you're talking about large complexes and whether or not anything got moved. But I'm pretty confident that if people are saying, especially President, Secretary of Defense, others are saying that they destroyed the target, they probably destroyed the target.
The Israelis, as I believe we now should all know, or you will about if you don't, have also followed up with attacks on areas around these sites. We don't know the extent of it. Some of it was reported as more around tunnel entrances and such. Is it likely they're trying to seal this up, to entomb Fordow primarily, or Isfahan, or Natanz?
Well, that's one possibility for sure. Also, you have the likelihood, just because you destroy a specific target doesn't mean that they didn't move some or even a lot of fissile material and centrifuges, etc., out of that particular area to somewhere else. And if that happened, then of course they'd want to strike those other targets sooner than later. So BDA becomes much more complicated when you're talking about not just a specific site, but also the things that could come out of those sites, whether they're trucks or other vehicles.
Going to the next steps, what before I want to get into the naval aspect of this, there's been a lot of talk of the Straits of Hormuz, and I know you know those waters. One of the reasons over the years I've appreciated your insight, Bill. But what are some of the next steps that should be taken beyond the battle damage assessment?
Well, I think one is going back and reminding the world, reminding the public, not just what the United States has said, but what other countries have said too. But just back to the United States, you can go back 45 years to Ronald Reagan, through George H.W. Bush, Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, Biden, and Trump, and they've all said without a doubt that Iran is a terrorist nation that supports numerous terrorist organizations, to include Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, many others, and that we've lost thousands of lives, and that in no way, shape, or form is the United States or the free world going to allow Iran to become a nuclear nation. So this is not something new that President Donald Trump said. This is something that's gone back 45 plus years, and it's something that the world in general realizes. Now, you ask the question about the Strait of Hormuz. About 20% of the world's fuel goes through the Strait of Hormuz, so major issue. And I think that would be one that would get not just the United States and Israel irritated, but much of the rest of the world too, because this will have a direct impact on the pocketbooks of everyone globally.
And I believe it was a former IDF commander who made this statement in the last 12 or so hours that if Iran were to attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz, it would not last long, something to that effect. So let's go into those waters. Look, you've commanded there. You've been Chief of Staff for U.S. Naval Surface Forces. You understand this. Help the audience understand what we're dealing with in that area. And when you add to this that the Houthis are a factor, to what extent, I don't know after the degrading of some of their abilities, but what it looks like in those waters, we have a third strike group, I guess, call it, within the area now. Just break that down for us.
Sure. Well, first of all, it's very, very tight. Going through the Strait of Hormuz, you have Iran to the north, you have the UAE and Oman to the south, you have Qatar and Bahrain to the west, and so that in itself makes it a very interesting environment. Certainly within missile range, certainly easy to mine that area. So that's the first part of this. The second part of this is it is a quick response area. In other words, because you are so close to Iran, it means that anything that comes out of Iran or ships, submarines, etc., that are in that strait would require a very fast response because you don't have long flight times. And so it's always an area that people are on the edge. The Houthis and their nonsense over there from Yemen, but certainly funded by Iran, has become a major issue as well. And remember, it's not just whether or not you stop the flow of oil and other goods and services around the world, but it's also the impact of the cost to do business. Insurance companies are certainly going to raise their price if you are operating in an area that has threats to destroy those very expensive assets called commercial ships, which are very expensive. So now your insurance price goes up and the cost of doing business goes up, and you have personnel who are manning those ships now that are in greater risk, and so they require a little more pay to operate in that environment. And there you go. Your cost of doing business, therefore the cost for consumers goes up because you have someone running Iran that's misbehaving.
The other players in the neighborhood, as you laid out by the map there, when, for everyone, I would advise you to take a look at the map where the Strait of Hormuz is. What could they do? And this, in part, Bill, I think goes to who did or did not do. May have, we find out, cooperated, provided intelligence, allowed flyover, still does with what's going on between Israel and Iran. But who are the other players or that could play a role in this should Iran really try to close the strait?
Well, I think a lot of these countries are playing roles in significant ways. Jordan is playing a major role. Turkey's playing a major role, and they're doing so quietly, but they're still doing so. Syria has said this is a new one, right? I mean, when you have the head of Syria after just meeting with President Trump, and he says, okay, if they need to intercept missiles, etc., inbound to Israel, for example, they can use our airspace. Saudi Arabia is certainly a major player in the area. United Arab Emirates and Oman, major players in that area. So it's not just politically, it's not just economically. If you're Iran and you want to move any kind of goods and services around, whether into your country or out of your country, and those countries around you, to include Iraq, by the way, wants to slow or stop this down, they can do that. Remember, before Saddam Hussein was hung by his own people, Iraq was the great checkpoint to the Iranians. Iraq was the country that Iran was most concerned about. You have the Sunni Shia issue going on there, obviously, at the time. That check is no longer there from Iraq, which is certainly a concern and something that has to be continued to be watched over the future.
You know, the question I want to ask, but we probably shouldn't talk about too much, where would we position ourselves? So therefore, I just kind of asked it. In whether relative to the Straits, of course, in the Gulf of Aden, in other areas, in the Arabian Sea. When you think about the assets, like I said, crowded waters include in the Mediterranean. This is strategically quite a big picture.
Well, it is a big picture. You're absolutely right, David. And where we place ourselves, we're placed quite well right now. We are placed well both strategically and tactically, and have been for many decades. And this is where credit needs to be given to both Republicans and Democrats to make sure that we continue to have troops and the right assets placed in theater to be able to respond to these types of things. And so while there were major disagreements on whether or not we should have gone into Iraq or Afghanistan or other places, the reality is that both sides, at least the adults in the room, understood the importance of maintaining a presence in that part of the world because it has such a major impact, not just on our security, but on our economy. And so this is something that we have placed people, forces, et cetera, in the right place, and sometimes at a great cost. We only need to go back and look at Khobar Towers again. Many airmen died there at the hands of the Iranians. We only need to go back and look at the Marine barrack bombing, again, done by the Iranians, and many other attacks of our embassies and bases over the last 30, 40 years by the Iranians, to understand that it comes at a cost to be there, but that the response to that is that we're able to do things like was just done, where you say, nope, you're not going to get a nuclear weapon. We have the right capability in theater, whether that's Tomahawk shooting submarines or surface ships, or whether that's personnel that can shoot down missiles, etc. We have the right people in place.
Well, that is good to hear, and there will be much more to come. By the way, let me put in a plug for why everyone should read Guaranteeing America's Security in the 21st Century. It's because of what you just heard, and we'll continue to hear on this show. Dr. William Parker, CEO of Parker Maritime Technologies, author, as I just mentioned, his book, former naval officer as well. Bill, always appreciate your wise counsel, my friend. And, I'll add this. I have a friend who was digging in that rubble in Khobar. And yesterday, back and forth on text, I think one of the words he used was, I could exhale.
Exactly. David, thanks for all you're doing and keeping the public informed. You're doing a great job there on your show, and we appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Always, my friend. Thank you very much. Dr. Bill Parker, again, CEO of Parker Maritime Technologies, former naval officer as well. Many accolades. You can get all of his information. If you go to the X article for today's show, you can click through to his website,